We have the famous Edie on our podcast.
Oh,
Edie,
you said
thank
that
you.
with such enthusiasm.
I'm excited. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
As we get the ball rolling, I always love to ask people to tell us a little bit more about yourself. Who are you? What brought you into what you do? And let's go at it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks for having me. I love getting on these. I obviously don't have the bandwidth or maybe the courage to run one myself. So the fact that all of you great folks who do have me on a regular basis is awfully friendly and kind. So, Edie Edens, CEO, founder of Edie Law, been in the industry almost 20 years now. Attorney by trade, as most folks know, came into the space. I think there's a great meme out there right now, someone falling down an icy hill, and it says how I got into clinical trials. And it's pretty much how all of us somehow, some way fell into it. And that's certainly true, especially as an attorney, because most folks are like, what do you even do as an attorney in this space? Which is an excellent question. And I very serendipitously happened to go to a law school that had a phenomenal health law program. I was connected to a major academic medical center. And so, in walking out, had opportunities available to me around human subjects research, protection programs, IRBs, quality, contract officer type work that was just unique. And then again, a little bit of serendipity there. And had come from a background and a family that had at least enough healthcare know how to know what clinical trials were, why they were important to the ecosystem at large, but also why there might be some rules related to investigating drugs and devices on humans and why that might be important. And as soon as I took that first role in the academic medical center world, just fell in love with the industry and spent 10 years there. Knowing that I'd probably leave eventually, just because it's pretty rare that folks spend their whole career in one place these days. But I wanted to soak in all that great knowledge and all those opportunities and had a lot of it at the enterprise wide level, which is the more legal research administrator type of experience, but also got to spend time in their comprehensive cancer center. And that gave me a lot of site ops perspective, again, from compliance and legal and quality, but a very different perspective than being at the enterprise wide level mechanisms. And when I decided to break off and do contract consulting through many other mechanisms, through different firms, through different companies, which is what I've been doing since 2017, I really started working, as you'd expect, with academic medical centers, but also with a lot of small sites, as independent sites and site networks were becoming more and more known at that time. Because it was like, hey, I have this experience on a really big level that could impact you who needs it in a very fractional and small way. And you need help just as much as the big guys. You just have a smaller budget and smaller volume. It needs to be scaled and tailored to what you need. And over the last several, I guess almost 10 years as a contractor, really saw that gap. And that was why I decided to create E-Law was, look, I feel like CROs and sponsors, I'm always happy to help them and have conversations with them. They have a small army of folks like myself and my team in-house at most organizations where they're able to access our subject matter expertise for their needs. Who doesn't usually have access to our subject matter expertise is vendors coming into the space, even though they might have a really great idea, a really great solution, and then academic medical centers and sites, independent sites. And so we've built a team of now four of us total who are quality and legal focused across operational and practical solutions, really more intended for those vendors and sites. Yeah, and we all have a great story about how we all serendipitously fell into, like I said, none of us knew we would be doing this on the day we were sitting at university or sitting in grad school, but we all are extremely passionate about the industry. And for me, it was important to bring in people who, of course, have certain degrees, certain qualifications, but also have actually been in the trenches. I need to know you've actually been in front of an FDA auditor representing the site or representing the vendor. I need to know that you've actually, maybe for certain roles, been a coordinator, been the quality assurance person who's overseeing the coordinator work, the nurse, the PI. I need to know that you've worked at a CRO or at a sponsor, that you have that type of experience so that we can speak from that perspective to a vendor about how they're going to be qualified or how they're going to be looked at in their QMS or why they need to be validated. So, enough monologuing by me.
No, I love it, Edie. I've known you for a little bit of time, but quite honestly, I've truly appreciated your honestness. I don't know how to say that word, but your honesty. And I appreciate your perspective. The other day when you and I were talking, you were talking about everything that you do from contracting to
Yep.
investigator issues, site issues. As you sit in that world, what has been really interesting to you? What are some issues that came along that you're like, I never thought I'd have to do this?
Oh, audit and inspection management in the heat of the moment, and even some monitoring visits have been some of the most interesting experiences I've had because even in law, as subjective as we are at times, we want to believe there's a standard, right? That there's a regulation and it says XYZ. And we know the regulations are a bit gray on purpose. They want to give all of us a little bit of flexibility. They have to apply to so many different situations and settings with one fell swoop of the pen, right? But to see the inconsistency with which auditors and monitors come in and look at the same set of facts and reach a different conclusion. And sometimes it's a really minor difference, right? It's preferential at best. And the auditor will even tell you that. Look, I'm leaning a little conservative, I'm leaning a little liberal. Someone else might go, that's too much or that's too little. But we would all agree we're generally in the right area or zone of a deficiency or a finding, right? Or some area for improvement. But then there are these times where on paper, you're talking to an auditor or a monitor who you have every reason to believe is a subject matter expert, just like yourself, right? And has a similar overlapping background. And they'll say, this is just egregious. This is a major finding, it's a major deficiency. And I'm sitting there looking around in the room for a witness, like, wait, what? I'm sorry, what, major? Really? Like you that's where you go with that? Because that's so not where I go with that. And I think of myself as being a pretty practical person. Or to be fair, the opposite. It's someone who's on a quality team that I otherwise have every reason to believe based on maybe they're at a really well respected sponsor or they're at a really well respected academic medical center. And they're like, hey, this is just not a big deal. I don't know why you want us to work on this. And I'm like, I'm sorry, is there anyone else in the room who wants to raise their hand and point out where this is a game changing situation and you must address it immediately? And that's one of those situations where you have to give the other person credit that they're a subject matter expert. And for all you know, they very much are. And also, maybe you're wrong, right? So I'm always very inclined to go, okay, hold on before I just tear into someone. But it's a very different situation when you're there on behalf of your client because you know they want to preserve a certain relationship. You're trying to protect them. If you don't think someone should be taking a deficiency or a finding, you're going to get a little heated about that. I always try to go back to the root of let's explain the facts again. Let's go back to the source of truth here, where maybe we misunderstood one another from the jump. But I've had more than one situation where someone on the other side has been very clear. No, I'm not misunderstanding. I'm outright disagreeing. And you're like, oh, okay. So there's no other way to go about this than to just head on it. Okay, this is going to be real fun. And you have to make some real quick decisions in that moment of what you're going to do. And I think that's one of the things folks don't always teach you between the law and the quality and knowing the regulations. People expect that every auditor is going to agree, every monitor is going to agree because we have this code that we all were trained by. It's subjective. And we don't all agree how it's applied. And we all are a little more conservative on some things, a little more liberal on others. So, no, it's really not black and white. And you are going to have to manage that conversation in that room. You're going to have to manage the egos and personalities that come with it in that room. And that will directly impact how good your outcome is on the audit. And as a contractor or as a firm, that directly impacts how much my client likes me at the end of the day, right? If they had to take a deficiency because they made an error, I never would suggest to a client you can do anything but. Having said that, if it was something that because we disagreed in the room and we didn't handle it well, whoa, that's a problem. That's a real problem. And that's something I don't think sites or vendors would think about either, because you would come in thinking there's a standard, there's a way, they're all auditors, they'll all think the same thing, they'll all come to the same conclusion, they'll hash it out in the room and they'll reach the right answer. It's, there's still humans involved, still humans involved.
Yeah, I gotta admit, audits are painful. We go through quite a few audits a year. And I remember one company, it was a CRO, medium size. We did an audit, we passed the audit. Then they're like, that person was not legit. We had to let him go. We did another audit. They're like, we're missing some papers. Can we do that? Well, like, come on, really? You're gonna do three audits on us? And then they did the third one and they're like, oh, these are some critical findings. Really? So we ended up honestly being like, I don't think this is the right fit for us.
Yeah.
Just backed
Yeah.
out.
And that's a hard part in the industry of like any industry, just because somebody has a title doesn't mean they're the best who's ever held it and doesn't mean they share the exact same way of doing it as another person who holds that
Yeah.
title. And so I run into a lot in my particular firm and the way that we're working with our clients where it's, I don't know what to do with this information, Edie, because the person it came from, their title was quality this or compliance this or even counsel. And I'm sitting there going, huh, okay, I want to give that person benefit of the doubt. They have credentials, they earned them just like myself. I would want to be given benefit of the doubt. So, like, where's the misunderstanding? Did they not get the same information I did? To be fair, a lot of times when I see attorneys pulled in, my first gut instinct to say is, are they a life sciences attorney? Because to be fair, there's not a lot of us who really know the inter workings and ops of the day-to-day clinical trial. And so there's some fantastic attorneys that act as outside counsel who absolutely know FDA regulations, but they wouldn't understand the day-to-day of a study coordinator applying those FDA regulations. If you said, hey, I've got to deal with source to EDC today, they don't know what that means. If you say my CTMS, it doesn't work, so I have this workaround in my workflow and there's a compliance concern about that, you'd have to explain what the CTMS is because they just don't have all of that in their wheelhouse. They operate at a higher level of advising. And so sometimes maybe they're giving a wrong interpretation just because they're not as minutia, or we disagree because we're saying the same thing generally, but I'm saying it more specifically. And I try to navigate that. But there are times, unfortunately, where someone is maybe just not in the right role and or maybe for whatever reason is not aware of the latest guidance, is not abreast of the latest information, the latest enforcement trend. That's hard because you don't want to call somebody else out. That's not going to help an already tense audit environment. But also, if you didn't do anything wrong, and or it's a failure of the quality function of the individual auditing you to understand the regulation or its enforcement, you have a right to speak up. That's what an appeals court is for, and we do have mechanisms for that, just in a very different way in clinical trials. And that's important that you do speak up. And that's tough. That's the one that I feel like folks just don't, there's no training for that. You get in the room, you have it happen once, and then you go, oh crap, I got to know how to handle this. What do I do? And you either have the people skills and the team to work toward that and through that, or you don't, and you need to get it quickly.
Do you work mostly with sites or sponsors or vendors, or is it all equally the same?
Vendors and sites for Edie Law. That's not necessarily the truth for my whole career, my team's whole career, because obviously we've come from a lot of different backgrounds. But for this venture with Edie Law, we're focused very much on and have so far been supporting vendors, sites, site networks, academic medical centers, and cancer centers too, just given some of our backgrounds and how well versed we are at NCI work.
How much do you guys actually dive into the study execution aspects?
So it depends on if you're in the site, if we're representing you as the site, we probably get very granular on some things because it may be you have. So here's a good question I got not too long ago. So I've got an investigational product and I am a small site that does not otherwise attach to an investigational drug pharmacy, right? But for this particular product, there is some reconstitution. At least that's how the site views it. Sponsor CRO is saying, is it reconstitution or is it compounding? Because if it's compounding, we might have to talk about a different setup. And that's game changer for the site, for the business, for the expense profile, for the budget, for whether or not they'll be selected, a whole bunch of things. So the first thing we've got to do is dig in that particular state law as well as federal law and go, what are the definitions for this exact scenario with these variables? And tell the site what they are and help them understand and help them also make the best decision based on that. Would it be allowable to do this? Could I do this so as to keep costs down but stay compliant, right? Like, how do I address this? Then we're going to help them go back to the CRO or sponsor that was concerned and basically make a defensible case of no, we can still proceed as before. And here's why. Here's the lawyer and counsel who's done the research, who's attesting to that. Here's what they've found. Now, here's our operational quality team who's worked with the site. on exactly what the steps look like. And we've written the policy, we've done the infrastructure framework quite promptly. So you should feel very confident, CRO and sponsor, that you can proceed. And for the particular site, one, now they're all the wiser. Every time they get this question forward, they know. We've set them up with a system. We've also helped save the site, keep that trial in that particular setting, and keep the business open. So it's very multifaceted what you're doing. So it might be that early on. It might be we have a preclinical company right now that's talking to us about preparing their pre-IND package to ensure that they're prepared for that conversation because they're trying to plan their phase one. But then we also might be, for a vendor, a little bit more removed. You're providing a service, you're hired primarily by the sponsor for said service at your vendor. So maybe for that vendor, we're more working on vendor qualification with sponsors, ensuring that you have a quality management system, helping you determine, are you subject to HIPAA, or are you not, based on what your activities are? How do you keep your patient data secure? If you have a breach, how do you manage that? Things like that. And if it's a vendor that's using AI, of course, now we're seeing a lot of regulations start to drop in that space as it relates to FDA and EMA. And so advising them on, okay, at this point, here's what you would have required of you. But if you added that new feature that you just demoed to me, that will officially put you in new territory. Now you'll be regulated a new way. And so there'll be a new requirement and a new lift. Are you ready to do that? If you are, we can build it for you. If you're not, then you know you cannot go past this threshold. So it's like a combo of giving that legal advice while also then operationalizing it in a really practical way. That was my frustration in the industry, is it's like you had to pick one or the other. You could either give really good advice at a high level, or you could be like an ops consultant, but you weren't allowed to do both. And I was like, why not? Why not? Doesn't one flow to the next? Wouldn't everyone benefit if one team could just give you all of that up front?
And I think I can see where problems can arise there. So people can look at that and say, you're doing too much. What are you
Yeah,
really good at? Right. So it's
right.
almost like that specialization model. What are
Yeah.
you really good
Right.
at? I can see it both ways, honestly. But
But for me, our team lives from the moment you're going to go into a human until the moment you want to go to market. We never step past phase four. In fact, we rarely touch phase four. We're only going to talk to you once you're in your preclinical gearing up for phase one for a few very select things. And otherwise, we are narrow.
yeah,
It's going to be data privacy. It's going to be regulatory environment. It's going to be contracts. It's going to be compliance. Not going to get into your labeling, not going to get into your pharmaceutical. But we try to be really good about knowing where those bumpers are, but we want it to be broad. What company wouldn't love to go? So let me get this straight. You can help me with some of my regulatory strategy as I'm moving into humans for the first time. You can help me as I continue to move through multiple phases, and or you could be my go-to quality compliance and legal firm for a variety of issues for my vendor for years and upon years, and there wouldn't be much that would come across your desk you couldn't handle. So it's expected of a general counsel firm that serves as a long-term representator or representation of a sponsor, a CRO, or a vendor. So it's trying to bridge those two worlds, which isn't easy. It's a very unique thing. People are
yeah.
either really curious about it and supportive of it, and hey, this is a new generation of a law firm and this is fun, or people are dismissive, which fair enough. I get it. It's not for everyone.
When I started Delve, I learned very quickly that I have to get a lawyer for everything. So at one point, I had four different
Oh,
lawyers.
I'm so sorry. I'm so
Um,
sorry.
yeah, it was interesting, and it's a lot to manage.
Frustrating.
Honestly, not so much. I just gotta have to rethink who do I go to for what issues.
Well,
And
it's
then
like your
also,
doctors. You got to
yeah,
remember,
and
you
then
know,
also as I work with them, listen, some of them will be like, yeah, I'll do this and I'll do everything. Are they really good at everything?
no,
No.
no.
So as I worked with all four of them over time, I've learned what they're really good at and what they're not good at. And yeah, it's just like everything else, right? You live and learn.
Also feel like that shouldn't be something you as the client have to learn. We should be disclosing that from the jump. You don't go to a pulmonologist expecting them to be a pediatrician, and that's advertised on the jump. You didn't make that appointment thinking you were going to take your kid in for a pediatric visit in that sense, right? And so to me, that is frustrating, and that is a constraint of the system. As much as I can completely empathize with someone who is maybe in the appropriate place as general counsel representing a company and gets brought something that's on the fringe and they go, all right, Edie, I'll try to do this for you because I am your counsel for everything else. I'd hate for you to have to go get someone for this one question. Fair. I empathize with you. But if that one question turns into 20% of the work that you're seeing, it's time to be honest. It's time to be honest and tell your client that's not what I do. It's if someone came to me with their site and said, Edie, you've seen me through 8 years of building this site. It's been amazing. You were here for the lows, you were here for the highs. We've done everything, but we're about to get acquired. This is it. This is it. Can you represent me? No, I can't. No, I can get you in the hands of someone absolutely fantastic who I promise will treat you with the same care and regard that I will. But no, that shouldn't be my firm. That absolutely should not be my firm. And why more attorneys can't just outright say, I do X, Y, and Z, but I do not do this, right? I'm really good at understanding that high level FDA regulation, but no, I haven't been a study coordinator, or I haven't been an IRB administrator, or I haven't worked inside an academic medical center, whatever it is. I don't know that from personal experience. I can't say that. I don't understand that. I have a lot more respect for the folks who do, right? If I call a medium-sized CRO and I say, "Oh man, I've got this client. I really want to help them find a great CRO. I'm not sure if you do ABC. Do you do this phase? Do you do this therapeutic area? Can you work in this jurisdiction?" And you go, "Gosh, this sounds like an amazing referral, Edie, but I don't. I can't take this one. You know who you should call is next person." I'll call you again. If you say yes and you treat my client like crap, I'm never calling you again. And I'm going to make sure nobody else does either. What's so bad about just saying that's not my area of expertise or we've gone beyond? And to be fair, we'd never leave you hanging and be like, we don't do M&A. Good luck. It'd be like, but here's who does, and here's who we refer our clients to. Here's who we work with for a seamless transfer. We can help you with the due diligence. We'll still be back here, raw cheering for you in the corner, and we'll be the first people to send you a congratulations card on the other side. That's great. We're happy for you. You've been a longtime partner, even if it means we're going to lose you as a partner as business. Still, we're happy for you. That's how it should be
And
because it should be
sometimes
partnership.
losing, yeah, and sometimes honestly giving up clients or business, it's not the end of the world. Sometimes it's actually good for you. Sometimes it's healthy, right?
Right. Sometimes it's a healthy, organic conclusion to something you've been working on. You both were building something. You knew it would come to fruition. Hopefully, it
Yeah.
did, which is actually a good thing. It means you
Or a
accomplished
business.
what. Yeah, it means you showed up and you did what you said you were going to do. And
Yeah.
now it's taking its natural trajectory. And okay, great. It's like when people get really mad about getting older, or aging. I'm like, but that's like part of the life experience.
Why do you have to remind me now?
I just don't get their wisdom without some of the wrinkles too. But
Oh,
also, that's okay. To me, that's okay. To me, that's beautiful. That's part of it. That's the whole cycle of things.
yeah. Sweetie, compliance is an area that's core to what we do at Delve. And it's an area that we're always trying to learn. What does everybody look at compliance? What does compliance look like? I would assume you and I might have different perspectives of what compliance is from different angles.
Yep.
But I'd love your angle. Like when you look at compliance, I would assume you look at it more from the site, the operations, things of that nature.
Yep.
But I'd love
I,
your, oh, yeah.
yeah. So this is one of my big things about building a firm and about how the team thinks. And they know this because I push them on it a lot. The first thing I want to hear is, what do you want to do? I think we get, and this is coming from an attorney, from a compliance specialist, but seriously, I think we get way too caught up in what we're allowed to do and what we're not. And that stifles creativity. It stifles flexibility. The first thing I want to hear, whether you're a sponsor, CRO, a scientist, a patient, whoever you are, like, what's your idea? What is it you want to do? What's the impact that you're trying to make? What's the problem you're trying to solve? Because I have yet to have someone go, I'm just greedy and I want to make money, or I really want to hurt a patient, right? No, no one comes at it from that perspective. People think they're solving a problem, they're curing something, they're lowering a burden, they're reducing a friction. So once you do that, the compliance, if you will, is in order to get you where you want to go, in order to do that process, in order to produce that product, what rules apply to you? Who even has jurisdiction over you, right? Is it the FDA? Is it the EMA? Is it HIPAA? Is it GDPR? Let's start breaking down all the matrices that are going to apply to you. To me, that's the compliance part, is knowing those regulations, being able to say which ones apply, right? The actual integrity and quality piece, the part that takes it the next step that a lot of folks miss because they just do regulatory or legal or compliance, is now how do I actually do that in a way that a site can replicate that, that a workflow could be standardized across multiple sites, that it's not so cumbersome a patient will actually adhere and remain compliant for months upon end, that it's justifiable that a sponsor will pay for it. Whatever it is, that disconnect between what's required and what actually it has to look like for it to be useful, that's where the integrity comes in. That's where the quality comes in. And then that last step of actually seeing is it practically applied, that's operations. That's where operations actually applies it, tries it out as we at least thought it would work, goes, it worked like 90%, but we need to tweak, we need to turn, we need to make a few edits. And that should be the flow of how any problem is addressed or how any idea is brought to light, is those multiple steps. And so you're touching in compliance and legal, you're touching in quality integrity, you're touching in practical and ops at these different junctures. And depending on what your capacity is, you can take it from one train stop to the next. And maybe you can take it from the beginning to the end, or the beginning to the middle, or the middle to the end, right? That's how I view it. What's yours? I'd be very curious.
I
Other
mean,
than
for us
red
to
tape,
look at it, we look at patients. Patient compliance is really the big thing that we deal with, right? Given that this is all we do, right?
right?
How do we monitor patients? How do we support them in conducting the study? How do we make sure that they're responding to the right data? So it's all of that put together,
Right.
give us that power of, yes, patient is compliant within the study. Yes, patient is responding to the diary, because at the end of the day, they're not responding, they don't have the help, they're gonna leave, we lose a patient. And it's expensive, right? So you think of rare disease studies, it might cost you what, $300,000 to find one patient. You think of smaller studies, maybe a small oncology, maybe 30, $50,000, right? So it's expensive to find the
Yeah.
patient and keep them in the study. So our goal is, how do we make sure that we retain that patient in the study and keep them compliant? And unfortunately, it's not going to work for everybody, because some patients, it doesn't matter what you do, this is just too much for them, right?
Sure. It wasn't a
What it is, right?
fit. Yeah.
But if we can at least improve your compliance retention by 5, 10 points of what
Yep.
you already do, then we're happy. Then we're really doing the right piece. But yeah, that's where
And I will
compliance is.
say, huge shout to you guys, because some of the things, and I won't go into specifics, but some of the things that I've seen you guys working on, you know what I'm talking about. You guys have found some very unique ways to actually quantify compliance out of otherwise very subjective data that is hard. And that's a huge core strength. That is a massive value prop in my world, to be able to say you can actually measure this compliance, because that's a really hard component to what my team and I do, is measuring compliance. When we come in and we do a gap analysis of your policies, at best, we can say you're missing 25%. Or if the FDA came in right now, you would or would not be shut down. But there's not an official measuring stick across every single regulation where we can quantify and actually go, you're 73% here, you're 22% here, you're 16% here. And that, to be fair, sucks, because we know we work in a scientific world where everyone wants data and KPIs. And I live by data and KPIs in my personal and professional life. But believe me, seeing it quantified and seeing you guys do it in some of the unique ways you do, hats off, man. That's
Thank
hard.
you. Thank you.
I really look forward to seeing what you guys continue to figure out how to quantify. It's one of the reasons that I picked up the phone some time ago and was like, I got to get in on what you guys are working on. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just want to look under the curtain, please. I'm a big nerd. And I got to know, if you're making this work, how. That is just the coolest thing, to be able to quantify that and see how it works, and then be able to apply it in a really meaningful way to what we were talking about, right? Being able to insert it in that funnel as you're going through with your solution to your issues, and then using it at that operational level to go, okay, we applied what you said, Edie, but actually our compliance is still only up X%. So that wasn't the entire issue, or we didn't
Yeah.
nail the root cause of what the problem is. We need to do more work on that. Great feedback. Great. Because that gives you real data to go back and keep pursuing the issue and know if you're actually hitting the mark and really creating a solution.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The world we live in from a clinical trial perspective, every study is different, every patient population is different, and it's not something that anybody will teach you at school. We've learned
Yeah,
over time, we've learned from experience, we've learned from all the studies that we've done and the patients that we talk to. We talk to probably what, 4 or 5 thousand patients a week.
awesome.
So we see it firsthand, and it's interesting. Some of the patients that we talk to, they're tired, they're exhausted, they need the help, they need the support, but that's what we're here for, to be honest with you. I'm here because I'm passionate about what I do. I'm here because at any point I could be one of those patients. You could be, right? I want to make sure that I treat them the way that I want to be treated.
Yep.
Um,
Everyone needs healthcare.
everybody.
Everyone in the world needs healthcare. Everyone. All of us. It is a unifying principle across humanity.
So let's dive into innovation for a minute.
Yeah.
So we dive into innovation. We talk about innovation all the time. How do you guys look at the innovation from the lens of the law? I know we talked about
Yeah.
AI and everybody getting AI left and right. What's going to be the next AI piece? But yeah.
So the thing you have to understand in regulatory law is we will always trail innovation. It's just inherent and endemic in how we're set up. And to be fair, that's not always a bad thing, right? Like I wouldn't have said that earlier in my career because I was too naive, I was too inexperienced. Now I actually think it's a good thing. It gives those of us in the law and regulatory space a chance to see where this innovation, where this latest advance might be headed before we just start slapping regulations all over it, right? It gives us a chance to explore. It does create risk, it does create liability, it does create unknown, but those are all endemic in innovation no matter what you do. So I'm not sure that I create a fear principle out of that, at least in my humble opinion. To me, that was always a part of the innovation no matter what. I think what is really interesting, and this is part of why I like working with vendors, is that most of our regulations, even the ones that now have been updated or retrofit into things that vendors are doing in the clinical trial space or have been clarified on how they should apply, right? Even still, the regulation was never written for the vendor. It was either written for the sponsor or it was written for the PI, because those are really who we recognize in reg and legal infrastructure from an FDA perspective and an IRB perspective, right? You're either the principal investigator, which of course the site, but we view that as the principal investigator as a responsible party, or you're the sponsor. And everyone else in between is somehow delegated or attached to the PI or to the sponsor. That's it.
Mhm.
That's how we view it. And so, what is written for the vendor? The vendor is essentially attached to whoever hired them. That's fine, but that doesn't help a site decide if a vendor is actually required to be compliant with HIPAA or not. And that doesn't help a sponsor know exactly whether or not they should require that the technology platform of that vendor has to be Part 11 validated or not. Because those regulations didn't really think about those vendors in that kind of gray space. And so for the vendors, this is not as easy as it sounds, for starters. Let me give you a little bit of validation there, because you're going into a world where every sponsor is going to ask you, you're HIPAA compliant, right? Will you do this, right? Because they're so used to talking to the site or the PI side, and vice versa. PI side is used to talking to sponsor side and hearing very certain things or being asked very certain things. So when you actually take a look at a vendor and you go, hold on, let's block out the rest of the world, does HIPAA actually need to apply here? Do you need to be compliant with GCP? Should I recommend that your platform be validated or not? Those are recommendations that have to be made separate from what everyone else thinks and what everyone else is going to ask, and based on the actual actions of the vendor and based on the actual laws and regulations, right? Having said that, from a business case perspective, do you know how hard it is as a vendor to go, no, we're not HIPAA compliant, but I swear we don't have to be? that's a whole add the conversation as opposed to subtracting a conversation for a vendor. And so now you have to make the decision as the vendor. Do you become compliant with something you're not required to be? Because that's what my counsel told me. Or do I just go ahead and bite the bullet and become compliant with something because everyone's going to ask me for it anyway, and it's going to be this huge deal breaker for certain possible deals? Is there a middle ground? Do I stay where I'm not saying I'm subject to HIPAA, but I will take certain actions so that a sponsor will still get on the playground with me? And that is where it's really, like I said, to be fair, very complicated for vendors to figure out what is the answer, but also what is the answer that will be accepted by who I want to work with, because those are often two different answers. And for us, it's where we really have to shine. If we're acting as your representation, whether that's legal or non legal in that moment, to go, I want you to know what your rights are. Like, what is the right answer from a legal perspective? Also, I want you to be very aware of stereotypically what a sponsor's used to, because I don't want you to miss out on business just because you're standing on your principles going, but I know I'm right. I know I'm right. That doesn't pay your mortgage or your business loans. So where do we find that particular space? Because that's hard. And then that's a moving target as you get new innovation and new regulations. So anything you tell your client today also has to have the caveat of, by the way, if you add that one feature, if you do this extra thing, if the regulation that's going to drop in 6 months says something different, we all have to come back to the drawing board again. And so everything you're doing as you're setting it up and giving them advice has to be very caveated, but also scaled. Like, I have to be looking at that, what's predicted to come out in 6 months, and tell you, look, I can tell you can do this today, but I have every reason to believe the new regulation in 6 months is going to make it that you cannot. So I don't want to see you invest $3 million in your product or your platform to do this, knowing there's a good chance you won't be able to do this again in 6 months. You need to know that. If you tell me fly a kite, I'm going to take the risk. That's your prerogative, but I got to make sure you know before you take that risk. And that's
Yeah.
what's hard about the innovation. And we don't want to slow you down. I don't want to, my clients have crazy, amazing ideas. Some of the things they come up with blow my mind, which is fun and exciting and also gives me great hope for the industry, right? That we have so many smart people that want to come in, and as providers and vendors, I don't want to put the brakes on you if you've had a great idea and your team can mobilize. And I know time is of the essence, because if you had the idea, someone else will too. But I don't want you to get in trouble either. And so it's like this constant dynamic where my clients and I really have to have strong communication, so they feel like they can really tell me everything and they can push and go, "Edie, that timeline won't work. We'll miss out on the market." Or if you tell me I can't do this, the whole product's sunk. There's got to be another way. But also, I've got to feel like I can be firm enough with you that you understand, if you take this chance, you could tank your company, or you
You're
could.
telling me, so you're telling me that ChatGPT won't help me?
It will. I love AI. I was gonna say, I think ChatGPT, Claude, and all of them have gotten a bad rap, especially from the lawyers, in the sense of they got overused in the wrong way without being human in the loop checked, which no one I know who's good at AI would suggest you do.
Yeah.
But no, it can be wildly helpful. I think if you don't have the subject matter expertise to call bullshit when ChatGPT might be messing up, that's where your problem is. But if you know enough, it could be a really useful tool. And I
There's a
wouldn't
lot
tell
of
people not to
power.
use it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
There's a, to your point, there's a lot of power there.
power
But
comes with responsibility.
yeah. Edie, thank you so much for the conversation. I have taken a lot of your time and I'm truly appreciative. So, as one thing, one question I always ask at the end of the podcasts, not knowing who's going to come on board next, what is one question you would ask that person?
The next speaker on your
The
pod.
next speaker. Yeah. But before
Ooh.
you answer that one, I have one for you that you need to answer from the
Oh,
prior.
oh, yes. What was the last one?
So from the prior podcast, the question was, when is it that you came to this industry and it was more of a aha moment, as in you want to stay, you want to
Yeah,
go? As you said it earlier on, most of us came into this industry, we had no clue what we're getting into.
yeah. I will say it was very much around year 6 or 7 when I made the change to go inside the cancer center that I mentioned. And the real switch was, instead of being at an administrative office building where you had to be out in the community to get that connection with your PIs, to get that connection and really see patients and clinics and feel like you were making that difference. Now my office was literally in the middle of the cancer center and all the clinics and all the hospitals and all the patients. And some of it had to do with the fact that I was so site facing and patient facing then with the work that I was doing. So I felt closer. Some of it had to do, for me, growing up in a family with a lot of clinicians. I'd spent a lot of time in physician practices, around clinics, around hospitals. And so some of it was just literally, I felt comfortable. Like it was like I'd come home. It was like, oh, like holding an elevator for a patient, or walking through and seeing clinic. That just felt more routine and regular and connected to me than when I was in that administration building on the side of campus, where it was harder to feel that, even though you knew it was there, you knew what you were doing was important. And that was my aha moment of, okay, if I'm going to do this and really stay passionate, focused, not distracted, I'm going to have to stay closer to the clinic. That's what clicks for me. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning, even on the hardest mornings, is knowing that there's a patient who could stand to benefit from this. This isn't just the IRB, the administrators, your colleagues, counsel. There's a patient who's counting on you. You don't feel like that as a lawyer usually. You know what I mean? You're not a clinician. And so to be a little bit more close, a lot closer, frankly, to the patient, that got that for me. That's 100%
Love
what
it.
that was. Great question. Whoever that was, fantastic question. I think my question for the next person would be, when did you see the change start, where we've always done research with academic medical centers? That's always been the site. But when did you, whoever you are, whatever stakeholder you are in the industry, when did you start to notice, and how, that smaller sites, independent site networks, and non academic sites were starting to have a real foothold? That's complimentary. That's not me saying AMCs take a hike, because obviously I just talked about how much I love them. But like, when did you start to see that rise of, there's another type of site out there. There's another
Mhm.
type of way we could connect to a patient. There's another type of way we could do a trial. Because I'm very curious how others came to experience that, knowing what my own experience is and how tied I am to it. So that would be my question.
I love it. Thank you so much, Edie. I
Absolutely.
appreciate the conversation, and until next conversation.
Sounds good. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.